Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending this last conference of the tracks before the close-up of today. And I'm Thibaut Milan. I'm the head of innovation for Smile, and I'm here today to talk to you about how to code less, how to work less, but to create more using AI. So pardon me for the very clickbait title of this conference. The problem I try to solve on a daily basis is, first, I don't have a lot of time to code anymore because I have a lot of other things to do, and that's probably also something that you may encounter in your professional life, having to deal with clients or colleagues, external requests, writing documentation, doing a blog post for marketing or for your own exposure, stuff like that. So it takes a lot of time away of developing. And even if you're doing development, I mean, it's not just like a very intense moment. You have a lot of repetitive tasks. You have bootstrapping project. You have to write a little bit of documentation, even if in your code. You have to do project management too. So it takes time, and the idea is to see how we can use AI to help a little bit on that. First, I think all of you already know about tools like GitHub Copilot, Time9, AWS Code Whisperer, or Continue.dev if you prefer an open source alternative. So those dedicated coding assistants are really great to help you when you are on your IDE and work. One of our own study, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, showcase that we have 35% of saving time on all the different projects, I mean all the parts of a regular project at Smile. And you have a lot of other LLM-based tools to do the rest of the work. So for example, managing email, planning, meeting, doing summaries, news curation, and so on. And the idea is to walk you through a little bit of one of my day at work and how I use the different tools to just like be more efficient, be quicker, and have more time actually to create stuff instead of doing all of the thing. So the first step on the morning is checking my inbox. I have a lot of emails in those. I have a lot of sometimes email thread with a lot of reply. Obviously, a few things that I want to do is not read this email chain, but just get the key point really quickly and being able to trash it or answer it really quick. So I'm gonna just show you how it display. So I have here my email client, and for example, that's a mailing, like a mail chain about end of the year celebration. I don't want to go through those 8 different emails, so I'm just gonna click here in my email client, and I have like a really quick summary of all what people are talking inside of that, and I can decide if I want to respond or not, or just like mark it as done, and that's it. Another thing that I displayed before is the ability to do a search. So for example, I'm like, what's my reservation, my booking hotel for yesterday and today, and being able to use generative AI to do vector search through your email and give you the direct answer with with reference. So here, yeah. So here it's just answered that your hotel booking of yesterday and today was at this hotel for the 4th to the 6th of December. And if I click on the source, I can directly access the email used to answer my query. And another thing that I'm doing also quite a lot, and I'm gonna find it in my draft, is, for example, sometimes I receive email request and I'm really pissed about, and you know, I'm just usually I'm gonna sit on it for a couple of hours, take time to reflect and say, okay, I need to be nice. I don't need to like being too impulsive to answer people, but what I really want to read, to write actually is something like that. But that's not really professional. So one thing you can do using generative AI is to rephrase whatever email or whatever documentation you were writing, and just said, okay, just please rewrite that in a professional tone. And yeah, that's definitely something that I can send to my boss instead of just being completely crazy. And it saved me probably like 2 hours of spiraling and being like, okay, I'm gonna need to calm down and come back to that later. So I found that's a very liberating way to deal with such kind of things and being also more efficient. But obviously, you can apply that to any kind of work and any kind of other use cases instead of just being in a email rage. Another thing that I do, especially on every day, is to do my planning. And I'm really not quite good about doing my planning, and I'm using another tool that basically indicates me also like for all my tasks I'm doing on a day-to-day, I can like add another task, for example, and it automatically analyzes whatever I'm writing and suggests me automatically like a category. I can assign a different category, and it can assign also sometimes, and based on what I'm typing, it review automatically and change it. Doesn't quite work right now, but usually when you're typing like for someone else, for example, it automatically categorizes it as a client work for myself. And the good thing is I'm just picking like all the things that I need to do today, and it's also giving me like this little nice counter saying, well, you planned 8 hours of work on an 8-hour day, and just before checking stuff, I was at probably more than 10 hours, so yeah. You plan 12 hours of work on an 8-hour day where you're gonna probably have like just 5 hours of very focused work. So that's definitely not manageable. Just like think about deferring some stuff to another day. That could be nice. So yeah, like the planning, sorting, prioritizing can be automated, but also making a daily summary. So this tool at the end of the day generates a nice summary of all the email I sent, all the tasks I've done, etc. But not just like the list picked up from my Trello or my email, but also trying to rephrase it the way I would have wrote something in my Slack channel or whatever. So I can just like email my manager, or I can just like post it on my Slack, and people are gonna have like a very nice conversational piece of text that I could have wrote. Another thing is meetings. I think some of you already maybe using tools to be able to do note-taking. I use a very cool one that do note-taking, but also, like, for example, this is a meeting I had that was a follow-up about using LLM for developers, and it creates automatically, based on the record of my screen during this meeting, a nice summary. Sorry, it's in French. The call was in French. But also a more detailed one with key points, and for every key points, it wrote detailed about it. It gives also like lesser important point, but also create a list of tasks. And based on the transcript, if I had put the different person that were talking, because it do diarization, so it can split the different people and how many people talking, it would have assigned the different tasks to the right people. That's really convenient. And when you're recording and you're doing the talk inside of that tool, there's also a function which is catch me up. So if at some point you're not listening anymore and someone call your name in the middle of the talk, you have like this little overlay on your screen, and you just can click the catch me up button, and it's gonna give you like the 5 minutes catch up, and you can just like be like, yeah, sure, I was listening all the time. I may have used that once or twice, 10 maybe. Another thing that I like to do is just news curation, stuff about my work, stuff about new technology, new framework, whatever, but it's a little bit difficult to keep the pace of all the news and so on. So what I like to do is pick a couple of articles and then use AI to help me with that. For example, this morning I got this article, this really nice article about Starlink and how they handle TCP communication between the different satellites, and how they are solving the issue of delays and so on. But it's obviously a little bit long and a little bit technical. I don't have time for that. One thing I can do is copy-paste the link and, for example, ask a generative AI like OpenAI or whatever, just to say, oh, can you just make me a summary of this article? And then it generates me this nice summary of key points, so I can go through the article really quick. I can also ask like, okay, that's fairly technical, I still don't get it, can you explain me like in 5? And then it's gonna use rephrasing with metaphors and so on to explain it in a more understandable way. Another thing that I do sometimes for like research paper, for example, it's like fairly between 40, 80 or more pages, and you don't have time to look to anything, and also I don't have like all the technical background to understand it. So another cool tool I use is NotebookLM. I don't see it. Yeah, it is. So NotebookLM allows you to upload document, PDF, link, or whatever. So I paste the link as a source for today, and then it generates me automatically a summary of it. I can have like a FAQ of it also that it generates automatically to go through. It generates me, yeah, I can do like an executive summary for if someone asks me, for example. So it does like this kind of different things around, and it can generate you a podcast about it with 2 hosts that are gonna talk about it in a very like easy, accessible, understanding way. We're gonna see it just after the result of that. And another thing is I'm writing a little bit of content about my news curation. So I have an end-to-end pipeline that make a lot of different calls, as you can see, to OpenAI. The idea is when I see there's such kind of article, I have a Chrome extension that I made with OpenAI because I don't know how to code Chrome extension. But just one click, I can send the link to that pipeline that then save inside of my Airtable table, yes, content, and it automatically generates like a description, so a summary of the article that I saved, and also use like 2 years of me writing that manually to have like my kind of tone and the kind of advice that I would give, and generate also like my automatic advice about this article. So now at the end of the week, I can just like copy paste this description and this link to my newsletter. It takes me like probably just like half an hour to do it, and before that it took me like 4 hours to do it every week. So that's kind of a good time saving. And yeah, obviously from time to time I still like tweaking a little bit the advice because it's not really like what I would have said, or it's said a little bit more nicer that I would have said. So there's still a little bit of tweaking to do it, but definitely saving a lot of time. Finally, around 10, I have time to code and to do things. And doing so, I'm using all the tools I've mentioned before. My preference right now is around tab 9 for some reasons. We don't have time to cover that here, but the idea is you can use this tool to write code. So basically, you're just like having automatic suggestion popping in where you're writing in your IDE. You can also insert comment to be able to have like more, to give more guidance to the model to whatever you're looking for, and then it's gonna generate sometimes entire function or entire method based on the instruction you give it. And it can also help you to troubleshoot code in a bit of in a different way that the tool that we use for the last, I don't know, like 6, 7, 10 years already, because it gets the entire context of the project, but it's also able to run the project at the same time, so it can like get all the errors from your project running. So it's a little bit more having more global context of your project, so it can spot some bugs and you're still writing code and it just like ping you and say, hey, you're just like, it's not gonna work because you forgot something in the declaration of the method or the way you instantiate this or this. And you can use it also to be more confident with a code refactoring because you have basically also a chat interface, so you can explain and exchange with the model to whatever you want to achieve. It's a little bit like you have a colleague and you're just chatting about like, oh, hey, how you would do that. I want to achieve this, but I don't really know how to do it. You're gonna use it also to ask questions about the project. I have some teams that Some colleagues sometimes just pop in the project. They don't really know the project because they didn't work on it before. They can use such kind of tool to ask, okay, what's the deal about the project? How this method works? Where is it instantiated and stuff like that? So if he doesn't have a colleague able to answer that right away, can ask the model to do it. And it's fairly usable. I mean, I was quite impressed by it. And it's not just things that I'm taking out of studies or whatever. At Smile, we ran a study on our own during 6 months with a panel of developers on our real project, with our real data, on real client project. And what we saw is we saved 39% of the time on writing new code on projects, or really on the building phase. 80% of the developers noticed time saving. 60% of them can't imagine stepping back, and they told us, like, if you're not providing such kind of tool, we're gonna do shadow IT, so you don't want to do that. And 15% overall productivity increase on the project. That's really like if you're considering all the tasks on a project, like not just writing code, but also writing documentation, test, all of those things. Overall, it gives us a 15% of productivity increase, which was, well, something that the executive committee is quite happy about when you're coming with like, oh, it's gonna cost like that much, but we're gonna save that much. So it's quite good to do it. You have the QR code if you want to watch the webinar I did last week about it. So we have like all the different information about the study, and also more detailed numbers, how to do rollout plan and so on. Yeah, there's also side benefits. A lot of more documented code, either because the model generates code that is documented, and also because the developer needs to document their code to influence the model that's going to help them to generate code. That's also increased HR satisfaction. Everyone likes to have like a cool, shiny tool, good Wi-Fi, good laptop, stuff like that. So that's something, obviously, that I think developers like to have like such kind of tool. And also, people start writing unit tests in my teams. That's just crazy. And it's, yeah, because like it's more easy to do, because the model helps you to like write all the extensive declaration of it, which is quite boring to do, to be fair. Then around 12, I got my lunch, and it's time to listen to my podcast that I generated before. And I'm just gonna show you. I don't know if...
Always fun to dig into the tech stuff.
Absolutely. And today we're going orbital, talking about Starlink, that satellite internet system that seems to be popping up everywhere.
Yeah, it's been making some serious waves.
It has.
So it was just
And
generated
one of our listeners sent
in
in this
5
blog
minutes.
post, a transport protocols view of Starlink.
And it's really like a conversation
Jeff
between
Houston,
two people on a
asking,
podcast.
well, how does this thing actually
With
work?
really,
That's a fantastic question, because Starlink
as you can see, it's really
isn't
dynamic. It's really
exactly
how
typical
people would
satellite
have like
internet, is it?
Right.
talked about
So
it,
to really
and
get
it's just generating like between 10 and 15 minutes of podcast for any kind of subject, any kind of level of difficulties of the subject, and it's really going for being able to make it really understandable for the mass. So even if you have like no knowledge about the topic that the paper is about or the article is about, you can generate something that's gonna help you to understand it in a very convenient way.
And these are way out there. They're orbiting at the same
Another thing that I like to do also, because of being used to doom scroll on all the social media, my attention span watching long video YouTube is not quite good. So something that you can do on the YouTube app on your phone, not on the website yet, is to ask Gemini to summarize the video. So basically, if you have like a 30 minutes video, you're like, maybe I'm not gonna be like over all of this. So you can have highlights of it. You can ask for summarization, and you can do basically like RAG on the video. So you can ask any question about the subject of the video, and it's gonna find information inside of the video and give you like the proper time code to watch the answer, and gonna also do the answer it directly to the chat. So kind of like convenient on some topic. Another thing that I'm doing also, and I'm exploring more, is to take the architect or the product owner seat on some project. For example, I had a client with a very limited budget, and they wanted well, let's face it, the sales guy wanted to do a proof of concept on a project, but we have like limited resources to do it, not a lot of budget to do it, and it was a big project involving doing video extracting. So we had video of people speaking at a conference, but speaking in multiple languages, changing languages when they speak, and they wanted us to extract the text, so doing speech to text in different languages, translate in multiple languages, created the subtitle file, re-upload it to YouTube with all the SRT files and so on. And the difficulty was one of the language was Luxembourgish, where there's literally quite no model being able to do speech to text on that. So it was quite a challenge, and we were like, okay, there's just 10 days of budget to do that, and we were like, well, no, that's not gonna work. Like, we needed way more budget to do it. But we said, okay, let's try it. And in just 5 days with a colleague, we used ChatGPT, and we just said, okay, let's go. We're gonna ask ChatGPT to, so we're gonna describe our needs. So basically, sorry again, it's in French, but we ask whatever we want to do. So we said, okay, that's the project. We want to give you an URL, and we want you to download the video, then extract the audio. Then from the audio, we want to do like some cleaning on the audio and so on and so forth. So we really went to like basically building whatever your client is supposed to give you when they're doing a project, so building really like all the specs and requirements, and then the model just started generating code, you know, and especially Python. Like I think the last time I did Python was when I was studying in university, so I was like, sure, like, let's try Python, yeah. So it started to do a little bit of things, and then you can refine it, like you can download it, you can test it. Sometimes it even allow you to run the code directly inside of a VM on the side, and then you can iterate. For example, here I was like, okay, I need also like the time code of the different in a specific format, for example, and it just like iterate on the text on the file, and so back and so forth. And at the end, what we did was just like the glue between the different piece of code that was written by the AI model, just saying, okay, we've built that part of the proof of concept, we've built all that other part, and we're just doing like the integration between the different parts, and we wanted to like validate that we can use this technology, we can use this AI model, we can use this or this, and we didn't have time to really like spend time on writing on the code to be able to do like using all those technologies. So yeah, that was a nice project, and as I said, it took us 5 days, so a week of work instead of probably doing fairly like between 2 or 3 weeks if it was a regular project without with us writing everything from the ground. Another thing I told before is at some point you're gonna probably want to write a little bit of marketing stuff, either a blog post or whatever. So here I'm using another tool, and I said, hey, I've been attending SymphonyCon in Vienna. It was 2 great days of conference and meeting people. I had that talk, that's going to be recorded and available soon. Let's brainstorm some idea of blog post. And the model just gave me like a little bit of different ideas, like kind of, okay, you can do this, you can talk about that and that and that. I said, okay, that's kind of great. Can you just like write then based on that plan, and then you're gonna start writing the blog post in a couple of seconds. I can iterate over it. I said, yeah, okay, that's cool, but I'm not quite like this, putting headers every time. That really sounds like it's made by an AI, so that's not gonna do it for my blog post. Can you just like change it and just use paragraph or section? Can you also include in the call to action something about like watching my replay, and it just iterate again inside of it, and I can just like copy paste that in, or just in one click save it in my Google Drive. Just change the couple of placeholders that it put for like a couple of photos or my own reflection and thinking about a couple of stuff, And yeah, I can just send it to the marketing team. I'm quite doing that a lot now with my marketing team. Don't tell them because they think that I really write all of the stuff. They are like, oh, that's really nice. You made that blog post and that blog post and that blog post about Evan. It just took me like probably 15, 30 minutes to do it, sometimes an hour if I need some tweaks. And if I would have to do that before, it probably took me a couple of days because, well, I don't really want to do it. So at some point I'm like, yeah, well, I'm gonna, wait until the last minute of the deadline to do it. But of course, you can apply that to, anything, not just like marketing material. Another thing that I'm doing is proofreading. Proofreading takes a lot of time, especially when you have documents to send to clients. I'm contributing to white paper, I'm contributing to project documentation that we are sending to the client. And going to review like 40 or 80 pages of documentation is quite a little bit of also boring, not really wants to do that, time consuming. There's already a lot of tools that can do grammar, spelling, passive voice, repetition check. That's not quite new, you can do that with anything. But the power of generative AI is also being able to define a tone of voice or a targeting audience or checking for legibility. And I'm gonna show you, for example, here. Yes. Oh no. Yeah, it takes longer than usual. Okay, so here I have like these 80 pages of documentation. It's a white paper. That's very long. And the last time that they said you need to review it, it's like 22K words. So I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So I was able to here define what's the topic first of my document, then who is my targeting audience. So in that case, that was more like head of IT on public institution, people that maybe not have like a technical background. So I need to have keep that in mind when I'm writing documentation or here a white paper. Also, what's the goal of the document? In that case, it was like really informative, like kind of like a tech watch and doing a very big summary and synthesis from this. I can adjust the level of creativity and the language, and then after that, I can here run a bunch of tests, including targeting audience. And when I run those tests, it goes through all the document. I'm just gonna show you on the first. Oh no, I broke it. No, I'm gonna just show you on the first paragraph because I think you can get it. The last time I ran the check on public audience, the first thing it catch was using things like talking about low code and no code, which people that are not fairly versed in technical background maybe not understand the concept behind it. So the suggestion was you can still use it, but you have to define it. Like for example, here I was first, I just put like NLP for natural language processing in my text. So it said, well, you probably need to say natural language processing, but also, as you said, your documentation is in French, then French people are gonna like to have it translated in French. So it comes out with TALN, like Traitement Automatique du Langage Naturel, which was like, ooh, I just broke it, which was quite like a little bit meh to me, but definitely worked because the guys in the public sector was like, oh, that's so nice that you take time to translate everything in French. So I was like, sure. Yeah, so to wrap up, I would say if you're asking which tool to use, my point is like just use whatever tool works for you. There's plenty of tools existing, and it's also okay to change. I'm experimenting a lot with different tools. Sometimes, it's like a fast-changing ecosystem, so sometimes there's tools that integrate functionality that you're using somewhere else, so you can just like rationalize and saving money also. That's one of the things to keep in mind. First, how you and your client data are collected, handled, what's done with it, is it just to train a generic model with it or not, what's the jurisdiction of those data stored somewhere. Then does it worth the money past the hype of using generative AI? Some of the products are just like, people super hype about it, and then when you try it, you're like, yeah, well, that doesn't really worth 30 additional euros on top of this other subscription of 30 euros on top of this other subscription, and so on. And also think about like the ecological impact of it, obviously, because running generative AI model, it's still quite intensive and resources and electricity, so it's still, yeah, something to keep in mind. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'm gonna be around a couple of minutes if you have more questions. Happy to talk about it, or you can just send me an email or send me a tweet. Thank you.